They said Zimbabwe was finished. Then a single move, a major continent-scale investment, changed that narrative overnight. In a decisive agreement worth $1 billion, an African industrialist committed to fuel, cement, fertilizer, and strategic infrastructure. And with that deal came more than capital, it brought confidence, supply security, and a regional logistics heartbeat. What follows is the story of how one transaction can alter trade routes, end chronic shortages, reshape industrial corridors, and force outside actors to reassess their assumptions about African agency and capacity. For decades, Zimbabwe's economic life has been hampered by unreliable power, fragile supply chains, and dependence on external routes for essential commodities. Long truck convoys, border congestion, and political friction made fuel delivery slow, expensive, and vulnerable to disruption. The result was chronic outages, idled factories, and a steady hemorrhage of national productivity. Mines could not run continuously. Hospitals depended on costly diesel backups. Small businesses simply could not scale. The country paid a high price in lost output and rising prices, and in the emigration of talent. Enter a strategic, industrial partner with a record of building capacity from within the continent. Rather than relying on foreign EPC contracts priced at premium levels and heavy with imported labor, this approach favors local contractors, domestic skills, and African supply chains. The central piece of the agreement is a long fuel artery, a pipeline from an Atlantic, deep-water port that will carry refined product directly to Zimbabwe's industrial heartlands. This infrastructure eliminates the inefficiencies of road transit, reduces transport costs dramatically, and transforms how energy flows across the region operationally. A coastal terminal linked by pipeline into the interior changes the logistics game. Instead of depending on unstable border corridors and long-haul trucking vulnerable to delays, a continuous pipeline provides predictable, high-volume throughput. That predictability cuts procurement risk, lowers prices at the pump, and stabilizes electricity generation where thermal plants rely on steady fuel supplies. For manufacturers, the difference is existential. Reliable energy means continuous production runs, secure cold chains for food and pharmaceuticals, and the ability to attract investment that previously shunned interruptions. The region-wide implications are significant. A pipeline routed through neighboring countries does not only supply one nation, it creates a corridor of opportunity. Transit fees, storage terminals, distribution hubs, and ancillary services become new revenue streams for partner states. This infrastructure effectively repositions a previously landlocked country as a logistics node rather than a peripheral consumer, shifting regional economic geography and granting new leverage in trade negotiations and industrial policy. Perhaps the most consequential aspect of this deal is the development model it embodies. Building with local engineers, contractors, and suppliers keeps value within the continent. Wages are paid locally. Skills are transferred, and downstream industries arise around the construction and operation of the asset. Where historically billions would leave as foreign profit and imported inputs, this approach amplifies domestic multiplier effects. Cement plants, fertilizer works, and maintenance yards sprout to service the corridor. Vocational programs scale to train welders, pipeline technicians, and chemical engineers. And small and medium enterprises find steady demand as service providers. This model also lowers costs. When projects are executed with regional capacity rather than premium international contractors, the same infrastructure can be delivered at a fraction of the price. That efficiency is not accidental. It is the result of leveraging existing regional expertise, competitive local procurement, and an insistence on regional supply chains. It demonstrates a different pathway for continental development, one where scale is achieved through intelligent sourcing and local content rather than through dependency on external firms. The social benefits are immediate and tangible. Job creation is the most visible effect. During construction, thousands are employed in excavation, welding, pipelaying, terminal construction, and logistics. Post-commissioning, maintenance crews, terminal operators, security teams, and transport managers create sustainable long-term employment. Beyond direct jobs, entire ecosystems of commerce immerse restaurants, housing, transport services, and finance, revitalizing local economies and reversing brain drain as skilled workers choose to stay. For a generation of young people, this is the kind of opportunity that turns uncertainty into a career path. Energy security also has a direct effect on public welfare. Hospitals depend on uninterrupted power for critical care. Schools can adopt digital learning tools. Factories can operate continuously and compete internationally. When fuel supply becomes reliable, inflationary pressures associated with transport and energy costs can ease, improving purchasing power and stabilizing markets. In short, energy infrastructure becomes a lever for social resilience. As much as economic growth, yet such deals do not occur in a political vacuum. Large infrastructure agreements rearrange local power dynamics. Within governments, factions and ministries may compete over control of revenue streams, procurement contracts, and regulatory oversight. Missing signatures or absences at signing ceremonies can signal internal disagreements or jockeying for influence. Transparency, clear contractual terms, and robust governance mechanisms are essential to ensure the public interest is protected and that benefits are broadly shared rather than captured by narrow elites. There is also a geopolitical dimension. Established external actors, Western energy firms, multilateral lenders, and other foreign investors watch these developments closely because they transform market access and competitive dynamics. An African firm delivering infrastructure at competitive cost shifts bargaining power. It requires outside actors to compete on terms set by regional stakeholders rather than to assume privileged positions. That strategic rebalancing generates diplomatic attention and occasionally caution or pushback as incumbent interests re-examine their positions. Risk management is critical. Ambitious infrastructure must be paired with institutional capacity, regulators able to oversee pipeline safety, environmental safeguards to prevent ecological damage, and social programs to manage displacement or local impacts. Contracts must include clear maintenance regimes, transparent pricing mechanisms, and dispute resolution frameworks to prevent protracted litigation. Properly structured, these safeguards ensure long-term operability and public trust. Another important risk is dependency. While an African investor may be preferable to external alternatives, any single large private actor can create vulnerability if the state becomes overly reliant on one supplier for critical inputs. The prudent strategy is diversification, multiple routes, diversified suppliers, and public policy to build domestic upstream capacity where possible. State oversight and competitive provisions can reduce concentration risk and ensure national resilience. The economic upside, however, is undeniable when managed correctly. A durable fuel corridor lowers input costs for industry, unlocks mining and agricultural value chains, and creates a platform for import substitution. Instead of exporting raw commodities and importing finished goods, the region can process more locally, capture higher value at home, and retain foreign exchange. That shift can translate into stronger growth, better fiscal balances, and a widening industrial base. Moreover, the symbolic effect matters. Confidence begets confidence. When a major investor publicly affirms a country's viability through capital deployment, other actors take note. Diaspora investors return. Regional partners reframe trade strategies, and global finance begins to reassess sovereign risk. A single credible deal can catalyze a sequence of investments, each amplifying the previous one, creating an ecosystem of growth where once there was stagnation. Finally, the political and civic test is how the country uses the opportunity. Infrastructure alone does not guarantee transformation. Complementary policies, training, education, industrial policy, small business support, and anti-corruption measures are essential to convert infrastructure into broad-based development. If governance is sound and the project's gains are shared, the pipeline becomes a lever for inclusive growth. If governance falters, the project can reinforce inequality and generate social tensions. In short, the $1 billion move we are discussing is far more than a commercial transaction. It is a strategic intervention that reconfigures logistics, energizes industry, creates jobs, and shifts regional bargaining power. It demonstrates a maturation in development strategy, African solutions built by African actors for African markets. The world surprise is not merely about scale, it is about agency. When African capital chooses to build the arteries of trade and energy itself, outside observers are forced to rethink long-held assumptions. What happens next will depend on governance, diversification, and local empowerment. Will the pipeline be the kernel of a new industrial century for the region, a corridor of manufacturing, logistics, and renewed growth? Or will it become a single-source dependency with limited spillovers? The evidence so far suggests potential for the former, a careful blend of local content rules, transparent governance, and regional cooperation can turn this investment into a turning point. For nations across the continent, the lesson is clear. Infrastructure that secures supply, deepens domestic value chains, and invests in people can change trajectories. When capital is anchored locally, benefits circulate locally. When projects are built by and for the region, the balance of power in development tilts. That shift from extraction and dependency toward control and reinvestment is what has truly shocked observers abroad. If you follow this story, watch how public institutions handle procurement, how local supply chains scale up, and whether training and community benefits are delivered. Those details will tell whether this agreement becomes a blueprint for African-led development or a single isolated success. Either way, the $1 billion move has already done something important. It proved that bold, homegrown strategic investment can redraw the map of possibility across an entire region.